You're eating alone, and someone sits across the room and glances over. Instantly, and I mean instantly, you become extremely aware of how you're holding your fork. You're walking down the street, and you notice someone looking at you from a car. Suddenly, you don't know what to do with your arms. You're at work, doing the exact same thing you've done 100 times, and your manager walks over and stands behind you. Your brain basically stops functioning. Nobody said anything. Nobody did anything. All they did was look at you. And somehow that was enough to completely derail your entire experience of existing. This isn't shyness. It isn't anxiety, at least not for most people. It's something much deeper, something baked into the hardware, not the software. Because the response you're having when someone watches you is the same response your ancestors had in situations where being seen meant something genuinely dangerous. Your brain hasn't figured out the difference yet. And honestly, given how long this circuit has been running, it probably won't anytime soon. Start with the eyes themselves, because this is where the whole thing begins. The human brain has dedicated neural machinery specifically for detecting when someone is looking at you. Not faces in general, eyes specifically. And not eyes looking sideways or downward, eyes pointed directly at you. A direct gaze grabs attention and diverts cognitive resources almost immediately, meaning when someone looks directly at you, your brain drops whatever else it was doing and redirects processing power toward that person. It happens before you consciously register it. Before you've decided to pay attention, you already are. This isn't a quirk. It's ancient. In almost every predator-prey relationship in nature, eye contact is a signal. A predator locking eyes on prey means the hunt is on. A dominant animal holding gaze means a threat assessment is happening. Your brain learned to treat a direct stare as an event requiring immediate attention literally millions of years before you were born, and it has not stopped treating it that way. Which is why even in a quiet room, with no threat, no danger, and nothing actually at stake, someone looking directly at you still triggers a low-level alert. Your heart rate ticks up. Your awareness sharpens. Your body braces, slightly, for something. You feel watched. Because evolutionarily speaking, being watched has almost always meant something. In 1924, the Western Electric Company started a series of experiments at their Hawthorne Works factory in Cicero, Illinois. The original goal was completely mundane. They wanted to know whether better lighting made workers more productive. So they increased the light in one part of the factory and measured output. Productivity went up, so they decreased the light. Output went up again. They changed break times. Up. They changed shift lengths. Still up. At one point, they made conditions actively worse, and productivity increased anyway. No matter what they did to the physical environment, the workers kept performing better. It took years for the researchers to figure out what was actually happening. And the answer had nothing to do with lighting. The workers were producing more simply because they knew they were being watched. Not because conditions had improved, not because they were being paid more, just because someone was paying attention to them. This became known as the Hawthorne effect, the tendency for people to change their behavior in response to being observed. And it turned out to be one of the most significant discoveries in the history of management and psychology, not because it was complicated, but because it was so stubbornly, reliably true. Watch someone work, and they work harder. That's it. That's the finding. The entire field of human relations management, every theory about employee motivation and workplace culture that came after, traces back to a factory in Illinois where the researchers accidentally discovered they were the variable. Here's the part that should genuinely weird you out. You don't need an actual human being watching you for this to kick in. A picture of eyes will do it. Researchers at Newcastle University set up an experiment in a university staff common room that had been running an honesty box for years. People were supposed to pay for their tea and coffee by dropping money into a box on the counter. Nobody was monitoring it. Some people paid, some people didn't. The researchers put a small poster above the box. Nothing dramatic. Just a banner image across the top, alternating each week between pictures of flowers and pictures of human eyes. The eyes varied. Different people, different genders, slightly different head positions, but all looking directly forward. In the weeks with the flower poster, contributions stayed roughly the same as always. In the weeks with the eye poster, people put nearly 3 times as much money in the box. 3 times. From a poster that everyone consciously knew was just a poster. And it wasn't a one-off. The same research group then looked at littering behavior in a university cafeteria. They put eye posters on the walls, not signs saying, "Don't litter," just posters with eyes on them. The odds of someone leaving litter on their table halved. Separately, they found that eye images made people less likely to steal bicycles from campus, more likely to recycle properly, and more likely to donate to charity buckets in supermarkets. A picture of eyes. Not a camera. Not a person. A picture. And the brain flinches every time. Researchers at UConn put it simply: observed people are nicer people. An agency cue, anything that suggests the possibility of being seen, changes how people behave even when they're not consciously aware of it. Okay, so what's actually going on underneath all of this? Because the immediate reaction, the heart rate, the fork awareness, the brain redirect, that's the fast instinct. But the behavior change, the part where you actually act differently when watched, that runs on something more specific. Reputation. Humans are intensely social animals who evolved in small groups where your standing in the community was directly tied to your survival. Being seen as cooperative, honest, and trustworthy wasn't just nice to have. It determined whether people shared food with you, helped you when you were sick, included you in hunts, or let your children play with theirs. A bad reputation in a group of 30 people in 50,000 BCE was potentially lethal. There was no moving to a new city. There was no starting over. Everyone knew everything. So the brain developed an extremely sensitive reputation management system. Whenever observation is possible, whenever there's an audience, even a hypothetical one, this system fires up and starts auditing behavior. Am I acting in a way that makes me look trustworthy? Am I being seen as generous, competent, cooperative? What does this person think of me right now? This is why being watched makes you perform better at work, pay more into the honesty box, litter less, and hold your fork properly for no real reason. You're not consciously calculating any of this. The reputation system is just running in the background, doing what it evolved to do, maintaining your standing in the group, constantly, automatically, whether the group is watching or not. The catch is that this system was calibrated for a world of 30 people who all knew each other and whose opinions actually mattered to your survival. In a world of billions of strangers who mostly won't remember you existed, it runs anyway. Every glance from a stranger on the street still triggers a mild reputation audit your ancestors would have genuinely needed. You just get mild self-consciousness instead. Now here's where the same system that makes you pay honestly for your coffee turns into something much darker. For most people, being watched produces a manageable response: mild self-consciousness, slightly heightened performance, a brief awareness of how you're being perceived. Annoying but fine. But for some people, the volume on that system is turned up so high that it becomes debilitating. Social anxiety disorder, which affects roughly 12% of people at some point in their lives, making it one of the most common anxiety conditions, is essentially this exact mechanism running at full blast, all the time, without an off switch. The reputation audit that most people experience mildly becomes a flood of catastrophic prediction. Everyone is watching, everyone is judging. Any mistake is permanent and fatal to how they're perceived. The fear of being observed becomes the fear of existing in public at all. And here's what makes it particularly cruel. The same thing that makes observation change behavior in normal amounts, the same ancient wiring, is what breaks down in social anxiety. It's not a separate malfunction. It's the exact same circuit, just miscalibrated. Running a calculation that was never wrong in the ancestral environment. Being seen by others matters enormously. In a modern context where the stakes are almost never actually as high as it feels, your brain is telling you this interaction could end your standing in the group. Your conscious mind knows it's just a coffee shop. The brain is not listening to your conscious mind. And then there's the modern version of this, which is worth talking about separately, because it's a completely new situation that this very old system is now having to deal with. We are, right now, the most watched generation of humans that has ever existed. CCTV cameras in cities. Facial recognition software. Your phone's location tracked continuously. Social media where every opinion you've ever stated publicly still exists and can be found. A digital footprint that extends back years and follows you everywhere. Jeremy Bentham designed a theoretical prison in 1785 called the Panopticon, a circular structure where cells ring a central tower, and an unseen guard could observe any prisoner at any moment. The prisoners, knowing they might be watched at any time, behaved as if they were always being watched. It was considered a thought experiment about power and surveillance. We now essentially live in it. And the psychological effects of that are real and measurable. Being watched affects cognitive functions like memory and attention. Participants in studies performed worse on working memory tasks when shown pictures of people with direct gazes compared to averted ones, because the direct gaze hijacked their attentional resources and diverted them away from the task. In practical terms, being monitored makes you worse at thinking, which means we've built a world of essentially constant observation, and we're running ancient hardware that was calibrated for a group of 30 people in a savanna, and we're wondering why everyone seems slightly more anxious and self-conscious than they probably should be. That's not a coincidence. That's just math. So why do humans hate being watched? Because for almost all of human evolutionary history, being watched meant something. It meant a predator had spotted you, or a rival was assessing you, or the group was evaluating whether you were trustworthy enough to keep around. The brain built a fast, automatic, involuntary response to observation because the cost of ignoring it was too high. And it built a reputation management system running underneath all of that, constantly auditing how you're being perceived, because in a small group where everyone's opinion of you determined your survival, you couldn't afford not to. Neither of those systems has been updated for a world of cities and strangers and security cameras and social media. They're still running exactly as they were designed to, which means every glance from a stranger on the street still triggers a mild alarm. A poster of eyes still makes you pay for your coffee, and your manager standing behind you still makes you temporarily forget how keyboards work. You're not self-conscious. You're just running very old software in a very new world. Does being watched make you perform better or just make you spiral? Let me know in the comments.